On the night of the 17th of January 1991, the sky over Iraq was waiting for a war it could not see coming. Radar crews stared into glowing screens. Anti-aircraft guns pointed into the darkness. Command bunkers around Baghdad were connected to one of the most dangerous air defense networks the United States had faced since Vietnam. Then, out of the black desert sky, a strange, angular aircraft slipped across the border. No flashing lights, no radio chatter, no dramatic dogfight. Just a single pilot, alone, inside a jet so secret that most of the world had only recently learned it existed. This was the F-117 Nighthawk, America's black jet. It was called a fighter, but it was not built to fight like an F-15. It was not designed to win turning battles in the sky. It was designed to do something far more unnerving. Enter defended airspace, find the enemy's most important nerve centers, and strike before the enemy could fully understand what had happened. For Saddam Hussein's Iraq, this was not supposed to be easy. Iraq had spent years building a dense air defense system around Baghdad and key military sites. Radar stations, command posts, surface-to-air missiles, anti-aircraft artillery, communications nodes, all of it was meant to make the capital a killing zone for attacking aircraft. In previous wars, striking targets like that often required large formations: fighters, bombers, jammers, escorts, suppression aircraft, tankers, command aircraft, and waves of support. But in Desert Storm, the United States was about to test a different idea. What if one aircraft, built to avoid radar detection and guided by precision targeting, could do what once required an entire armada? The F-117 was the product of American engineering at its most secretive and unforgiving. Its strange shape was not designed for beauty. It looked like a machine cut from obsidian, with flat surfaces and sharp angles that seemed almost wrong for flight. But that shape had a purpose. Every line was part of a larger effort to reduce how much radar energy bounced back to the enemy. The aircraft carried its weapons internally. It flew at night. It relied on planning, discipline, sensors, and precision. It did not need to roar over the battlefield like a symbol of power. Its power came from arriving where the enemy believed nothing could arrive. When Operation Desert Storm began, the Nighthawk was no longer just a secret project. It became one of the most important aircraft in the opening phase of the war. Coalition air power was massive. Hundreds of aircraft, cruise missiles, tankers, electronic warfare planes, command aircraft, reconnaissance platforms, and pilots from multiple nations, all moving on a schedule measured in minutes. But the F-117 had a special role. It was sent against some of the most sensitive and heavily defended targets, the kind of targets that could blind, confuse, or paralyze Iraq's ability to respond. The real shock was not only that bombs hit buildings. The shock was that the coalition was attacking the system behind the Iraqi military. Communications centers, air defense control nodes, command bunkers, interceptor operations centers. The goal was not simply to destroy tanks one by one at the front. It was to sever the connections that allowed Saddam's forces to see, react, coordinate, and survive as a modern military machine. That was the change Desert Storm revealed to the world. The enemy did not just fear the aircraft. It had to fear the system that made the aircraft possible. American stealth technology, precision-guided weapons, aerial refueling, intelligence, command and control, electronic surveillance, and careful mission planning worked together. The F-117 was the visible shape of a much larger American advantage. As the first bombs fell, Iraqi air defenses erupted. Tracers climbed into the night. Missiles streaked upward. To television viewers around the world, Baghdad looked like it was exploding upward from the ground. But much of that fire was blind. The guns were shooting into darkness, trying to hit aircraft they could not reliably track. For the men inside those F-117 cockpits, it was still dangerous. Stealth did not mean magic. It did not mean invincible. Weather, visibility, navigation, target identification, And enemy fire still mattered. A pilot still had to fly into hostile airspace, find the target, release the weapon, and get out alive. That is what makes the story more impressive, not less. The Nighthawk was not a superhero aircraft. It had limits. Its weapons were not perfect. Later studies would challenge some of the most dramatic claims made immediately after the war. Precision-guided bombs did not always produce a one-bomb, one-target result. Poor weather could interfere with laser-guided attacks. Battle damage assessment was often uncertain. But even with those limits, the F-117 proved something important. Stealth and precision could change the opening hours of a campaign. During Desert Storm, the F-117 flew more than 1,000 sorties and suffered no combat losses or battle damage. That fact alone helped reshape how militaries thought about air power. For decades, the assumption had been that heavily defended targets demanded massive strike packages and heavy risk. The Nighthawk showed that a small number of aircraft, used correctly, could reach into the enemy's most defended spaces and strike critical points early. The psychological effect mattered too. Iraq could see the explosions. It could hear the bombs. It could watch key nodes fail. But it could not always see the attackers coming. That uncertainty is a weapon of its own. When commanders no longer trust their radar picture, when communications begin to fail, when air defenses fire wildly into the night, the battlefield changes before the ground war even begins. And that is why the F-117 became one of the defining images of the Gulf War. Not because it won the war alone, it did not. Desert Storm was won by a coalition: soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines, logistics crews, intelligence officers, maintainers, tank crews, naval forces, special operations teams, and allied partners. But the Nighthawk represented the opening statement. It told the world that American military power had entered a new era, one where the first targets were not just enemy troops, but the enemy's ability to function. By the time the ground campaign began, weeks of airstrikes had already battered Iraqi forces, damaged command structures, disrupted movement, and weakened the army occupying Kuwait. The ground war lasted only about 100 hours. That stunning speed was not because of one aircraft. It was because air power, ground power, intelligence, logistics, training, and coalition strategy had been brought together with overwhelming force. Still, the image remains unforgettable. A black jet moving through the Iraqi night, unseen on the way in, delivering precision weapons against the heart of a defended capital, while the sky behind it filled with desperate fire. It was a moment that changed how the world understood American air power. The F-117 did not make war clean. It did not make war simple, but it showed that the United States could combine secrecy, engineering, discipline, and strategy into a weapon system the enemy was not prepared to face. And in the opening night of Desert Storm, that was enough to send a message from the skies over Baghdad. The next war would not be fought by the old rules. If you want more forgotten war stories, declassified files, and the hidden moments that shaped modern combat, subscribe to Declassified War Stories and turn on notifications, because some of the most important battles were never decided on the front line.